My name is Margaret Rose Sullivan, and I'm 62 years old. If you had asked me 4 years ago to describe myself, I would have recited my resume. Vice President of Operations at Continental Marketing Solutions, MBA from Northwestern, 33 years climbing the corporate ladder, overseeing a department of 65 people, managing budgets in the millions. I would have told you about my corner office with windows overlooking Lake Michigan, my efficiency, my reputation for getting things done. What I wouldn't have told you, what I didn't even realize, was how utterly lost I had become. This is the story of how breast cancer didn't just threaten my life, it saved it. I know how that sounds. Nobody wants cancer. Nobody should romanticize a disease that kills hundreds of thousands of people every year. But sometimes, not always, but sometimes, devastation cracks us open in ways that allow light to finally reach the dark, neglected corners of our souls. This is that kind of story. It began on October 17th, 4 years ago. I remember because it was my wedding anniversary. Would have been my 35th if Richard hadn't died 7 years earlier. I was 58 then, still raw from widowhood, still learning to live alone in the 3-bedroom house that felt cavernous without him. Richard's death had been sudden, a massive heart attack at 56 while playing tennis with his college roommate. One moment he was alive, laughing about a missed shot. The next, he was gone. No warning, no goodbye. Just an ordinary Saturday morning that became the worst day of my life. In the years after Richard died, I did what I always did when faced with pain. I worked. I took on extra projects, volunteered for every initiative, stayed late every night. Work was safe. Work was controllable. Work didn't require me to feel the devastating loneliness that waited for me at home. My daughter Jennifer, who lived in Boston with her husband and 2 children, worried about me. "Mom, you can't work all the time," she'd say during our weekly phone calls. "You need a life outside the office, friends, hobbies, something." "I have a life," I'd insist. "I'm fine." I wasn't fine, but I had become very skilled at pretending. That morning, October 17th, I woke at 5:30, as always, made coffee, checked emails on my phone while still in bed. I had a full day ahead. Department meeting at 8, budget review at 10, conference call with the New York office at noon, client presentation at 3. My calendar was blocked solid for weeks. I was in the shower when I felt it. A lump in my left breast, hard, distinct, about the size of a grape. My heart started racing. I felt it again, pressing more firmly, hoping I had imagined it. No, it was definitely there. For several long minutes, I stood under the hot water, fear flooding through me. This couldn't be happening. Not now, not me. I took care of myself. I exercised, ate well, never smoked, rarely drank. I was careful, responsible, disciplined. Surely this was nothing. A cyst, probably. Women get benign lumps all the time. I finished my shower, got dressed, drove to work. I told myself I'd call my doctor next week, after the big presentation, after the budget reviews, after things calmed down at work. But things never calmed down at work. There was always another deadline, another crisis, another meeting that couldn't be rescheduled. 3 weeks passed. Jennifer called. "Mom, what are you doing for your birthday?" My 60th was approaching in December. "Working, probably," I said. "That's not acceptable. I'm coming to visit. We're going to celebrate properly." "Honey, you don't need to do that. It's expensive, and you're so busy with the kids." "Mom," Jennifer's voice was firm, "I'm coming. End of discussion." After we hung up, I sat at my desk feeling a complicated mixture of gratitude and guilt. I hadn't been a particularly present mother, even when Jennifer was young. I had always been working, always distracted, always prioritizing my career over family time. Richard had been the involved parent, the one who went to school plays and soccer games, who helped with homework, who really listened. I had told myself I was setting a good example, showing Jennifer that women could be successful professionals. But the truth was more complicated. The truth was that I had used work to avoid intimacy, to escape the messy, vulnerable parts of life that required emotional availability I didn't know how to give. The lump was still there. I knew it without checking. It hadn't gone away, wouldn't go away, was probably getting worse every day I delayed. That night, alone in my too big house, I finally allowed myself to feel the fear I'd been suppressing. I sat on the couch Richard and I had picked out together 15 years ago. In the living room, we'd painted a warm, golden color because Richard said it reminded him of sunshine. And I let myself cry. What if it was cancer? What if I was going to die just like Richard, with no warning, no time to prepare? What had I done with the 7 years since Richard died? What had I done with my whole life, really? Worked? Always worked. Put in 12-hour days, sacrificed weekends, missed family gatherings, postponed vacations. For what? A title? A salary? The approval of people I didn't even particularly like? Richard used to beg me to slow down. "Maggie," he'd say, he was the only one who called me Maggie, "life is happening right now, while you're planning for some future that may never come. Be here, with me, with Jenny. Don't miss this." I had dismissed his concerns, told him he didn't understand professional ambition, insisted that my career was important. Now he was gone, and I had missed it all. Missed so much of Jennifer's childhood, missed quiet evenings with Richard, missed my own life while I was busy being important at work. The next morning, I called Dr. Patricia Chen, my primary care physician. "I found a lump," I said, my voice shaking despite my attempt at control, "in my breast, about 3 weeks ago." "Come in this afternoon," Dr. Chen said immediately. "I'll fit you in." The examination took only minutes. Dr. Chen's face remained professionally neutral, but I saw the concern in her eyes. "I'm ordering a mammogram and ultrasound," she said. "We need to check this right away. I'm going to call over to the imaging center and see if they can get you in this week." "I have meetings," I started to say. Dr. Chen looked at me directly. "Margaret, those meetings can wait. This cannot. Promise me you'll go the moment they can fit you in." I went 2 days later. The mammogram was uncomfortable, the waiting excruciating. The technician's face revealed nothing. "The radiologist will review these and contact your doctor," she said in a carefully neutral tone. "Can you tell me anything?" I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. "The radiologist will be in touch with your doctor," she repeated, kindly but firmly. I went back to work, tried to focus on a budget spreadsheet, but the numbers kept blurring. My phone rang. "Doctor, Chen, Margaret, I need you to come back in. The radiologist saw something on the mammogram. They want to do a biopsy." My hands went numb. What did they see? An irregular mass with suspicious characteristics. "We won't know anything definitive until after the biopsy, but we need to move quickly on this." A biopsy was scheduled for the following Monday. I spent the weekend in a fog of terror, researching survival rates online, even though I knew I shouldn't, calculating odds, reading horror stories and miracle stories, trying to prepare for news I couldn't possibly prepare for. Jennifer called Sunday evening. "How are you, Mom?" I almost told her. almost shared the fear that was consuming me, but old habits die hard. "I'm fine, honey, just busy with work. How are the kids?" We talked about her children, Emma, who was 7, and Michael, who was 5, and I felt my heart breaking. What if I never got to really know my grandchildren? What if I died before they had memories of me? The biopsy results took 5 days. 5 days of trying to function normally while my mind spun out catastrophic scenarios. 5 days of brittle politeness with colleagues who had no idea I was falling apart. 5 days of sleepless nights and food that tasted like cardboard. Oh man, those days we had when we didn't even know if we were going to make it. 5 days of sleepless nights and food that tasted like cardboard. Dr. Chen called on Saturday morning. "Margaret, I need you to come in Monday morning. I've already arranged for you to meet with Dr. Susan Harrington, one of the best oncologists in the city." It's cancer, isn't it? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. A pause. "The biopsy shows invasive ductal carcinoma. It's aggressive, Margaret, stage 3. But there are excellent treatment options, and Dr. Harrington will explain everything." After I hung up, I sat very still for a long time. Stage 3 cancer, aggressive. I was 58 years old, and I might be dying. The strange thing was, beneath the terror, I felt something else. Clarity. Sudden, sharp, undeniable clarity about what mattered and what didn't. My corner office didn't matter. My title didn't matter. The promotion I'd been angling for didn't matter. What mattered was that I had wasted years, decades, pursuing things that didn't feed my soul. What mattered was that I had loved Richard, but had never really learned to be present with him. What mattered was that Jennifer barely knew me as a person, only as an efficient but distant mother. What mattered was that I might die before I ever really lived. Part 2, telling the truth. I called Jennifer that night. When she answered, I heard Emma singing in the background, and the ordinary domestic sounds made me start crying. "Mom, what's wrong?" "I have cancer." The words came out in a sob. "Breast cancer. Stage 3. I'm so scared, Jenny." Silence. Then, "I'm coming home. Tomorrow. David can handle the kids. I'm coming. You don't have to. Mom, stop. Just stop. You always do this. You always pretend you don't need anyone, that you can handle everything alone. But you can't handle this alone, and you shouldn't have to. I'm your daughter, and I'm coming. I should have been there for the biopsy. You should have told me when you first found the lump." She was right. I should have. But I had spent 60 years learning to be self-sufficient to the point of isolation, and I didn't know how to do anything else. Jennifer arrived Sunday afternoon with an overnight bag and a fierce determination to take care of me. She looked so much like Richard, the same hazel eyes, the same stubborn set to her jaw, that seeing her made my heart ache. "Tell me everything," she said once we were sitting in my kitchen with tea. I told her about finding the lump, the tests, the diagnosis, about meeting with Dr. Harrington the next day to discuss treatment options. "I'm coming to that appointment with you," Jennifer said. It wasn't a question. That night, we talked more honestly than we had in years, maybe ever. I apologized for being absent during her childhood, for prioritizing work over being present, for not knowing how to show love except through achievement and provision. "I always knew you loved me, Mom," Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. "But I didn't know you, and I wanted to. I wanted to know who you really were underneath all the efficiency and competence. I wanted a mother who would talk to me about feelings, who would be vulnerable sometimes, who would admit when things were hard. I didn't know how, I admitted. My own mother was the same way, all stiff upper lip and emotional restraint. I thought that's how you were supposed to be, strong, independent, never needing anyone. But that's not strength, Mom. That's just being alone. Her words hit me with the force of revelation. She was right. I had confused self-sufficiency with strength, independence with resilience. But real strength required vulnerability. Real resilience came from connection, not isolation. Monday morning, Jennifer and I met with Dr. Harrington, an oncologist in her early 50s, with kind eyes and an air of quiet competence. She walked us through my diagnosis in detail: the tumor size, the grade, the hormone receptor status, the staging. The good news, Dr. Harrington said, is that your cancer is hormone receptor positive, which means we have multiple treatment options. The challenging news is that it's stage 3, meaning it has spread to nearby lymph nodes. We need to be aggressive. She outlined the treatment plan: 6 rounds of chemotherapy every 3 weeks to shrink the tumor, followed by surgery, likely a mastectomy, and then radiation, possibly hormone therapy for 5 years after that. I won't lie to you, Margaret, Dr. Harrington said. This is going to be hard. Chemotherapy is difficult. The side effects can be severe. But you're otherwise healthy, and that's in your favor. What are my odds? I asked, needing to know the truth. Dr. Harrington met my eyes. With treatment, your 5-year survival rate is approximately 72%. But statistics are just numbers. You're not a statistic. You're an individual, and every person responds differently to treatment. 72%. A 28% chance of dying within 5 years. I thought about Emma and Michael. Emma would be 12 in 5 years. Michael would be 10. Would I be here to see them grow up? When do we start? I asked. I'd like to start chemotherapy next week, Monday if possible. The sooner we begin, the better. That afternoon, I called my supervisor, Martin Reynolds. Martin, I need to talk to you about something serious. I've been diagnosed with cancer, and I'm going to need extended medical leave. Oh my God, Margaret, I'm so sorry. Of course, take whatever time you need. Your health is the only priority. I heard the sympathy in his voice, but also something else. Calculation. He was already thinking about who would cover my responsibilities, how to redistribute my workload, how to manage without me. And you know what? That was fine. It was more than fine. It was liberating. For 33 years, I had made myself indispensable at work. I had taken on more and more responsibility, never delegated anything important, convinced myself that the company couldn't function without me. But the truth was, everyone is replaceable. The company would manage. Life would go on. The question was, would I? Part 3, The Long Dark Winter. My first chemotherapy session was on November 14th. Jennifer had gone back to Boston, but insisted on flying back for that first treatment. My younger sister, Catherine, who lived an hour away and whom I'd only seen a handful of times in the past several years, also came. The infusion center was nothing like I expected. Instead of cold and clinical, it was warm and welcoming. Large windows overlooked a garden. Comfortable recliners were arranged in a spacious room. Patients sat with IV poles beside them, some reading, some sleeping, some talking quietly with family members. First time? Asked the nurse, a woman in her 40s, with laugh lines around her eyes and an air of calm competence. Yes, I admitted, my voice tight with anxiety. I'm Karen. I'll be with you through this whole process. The first treatment is always the scariest, but you're going to get through this, one treatment at a time. That's all you have to think about. Just this one treatment right now. Jennifer held my hand as Karen started the IV. The chemicals began dripping into my veins, poison designed to kill rapidly dividing cells, unable to distinguish between cancer cells and healthy ones. "Tell me about your grandchildren," Karen said, sitting beside me. "Jennifer mentioned you have two?" It was a gift, that question. It gave me something to think about besides the toxins flooding my system. I told her about Emma, so bright and creative, who wanted to be a veterinarian. About Michael, tender-hearted and funny, who collected rocks and told elaborate stories. My biggest regret, I found myself saying, is that I barely know them. I've been so busy with work that I've only visited 3 times in the past year. I keep saying I'll spend more time with them later, when work calms down. But work never calms down. And now, I couldn't finish the sentence. "Now you have the chance to make different choices," Karen said gently. "That's what cancer does sometimes. It clarifies what matters. Not always in the way we choose, but the clarity is real." Across from me sat an elderly woman, maybe 75, knitting while receiving her treatment. She noticed me watching and smiled. "First time?" I nodded. "I'm Ruth. This is my 12th session. Ovarian cancer, stage 4. She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. "How do you stay so calm?" I asked, marveling at her serenity. Ruth set down her knitting. "The first time I sat in this chair, I was angry, furious. I'd lived a good life, taken care of myself, raised 4 children, been a faithful wife for 52 years. Why was this happening to me? What changed?" "A woman who sat right where you're sitting now. She had terminal cancer, only weeks to live, but she was at peace. I asked her how, and she said something I'll never forget. I spent the first 6 months after my diagnosis asking why. Then I realized I could spend my remaining time asking why, or I could spend it loving the people I love, doing things that bring me joy, and accepting what I cannot change. She died 3 weeks later, but she changed how I approached my own illness." Ruth picked up her knitting again. "I decided to stop being angry at cancer and start being grateful for what I still have. Every day I wake up is a gift. Every moment with my family is precious. This isn't the ending I would have chosen, but it's my ending, and I can face it with grace or with bitterness. I choose grace." Her words stayed with me through that first treatment and all the ones that followed. I had a choice about how to face this disease. I could rage against the unfairness, or I could accept the reality and choose how to live through it. The side effects hit hard. Within days, I felt exhausted in a way I'd never experienced. Not just tired, but utterly depleted, as if my body's battery had drained to 0. Food tasted metallic and wrong. Nausea came in waves. My hair began falling out 2 weeks later, coming out in clumps in the shower until I finally called Catherine to come shave my head completely. "You have a beautifully shaped skull," Catherine said, trying to make me smile as my hair fell away. I looked at myself in the mirror, bald, pale, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, and didn't recognize the person staring back. I looked sick, vulnerable, mortal. I couldn't work. I tried at first, taking my laptop to bed, answering emails between naps. But the chemotherapy created a fog in my brain that made concentration impossible. Simple tasks became overwhelming. I would read the same email 3 times and still not understand what it was asking. Finally, I had to admit defeat. I called Martin and requested full medical leave. "Take all the time you need," he said. "Your job will be here when you're ready." But would it? And more importantly, did I even want it anymore? Days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and nausea and fear. I spent hours on the couch, too tired to read, watching mindless television. The house felt oppressively quiet. I had never realized how lonely I was until I couldn't distract myself with work. Jennifer called every day. Catherine visited twice a week, bringing meals I couldn't eat and a cheerful determination to keep me company. My colleague Thomas, whom I'd worked with for 15 years, sent flowers and a card, but never called or visited. It hurt, but it also clarified something. I had work relationships, not friendships. I had spent decades being professionally connected, but personally isolated. One afternoon in early December, Catherine arrived to find me crying on the couch. "What's wrong?" she asked, alarmed. "Are you in pain? Should I call Dr. Harrington?" "I'm so alone," I sobbed, all my carefully maintained composure crumbling. "Richard's gone. Jennifer's in Boston. I don't have any real friends. I've spent my whole life working, and for what? Nobody from work even cares that I'm sick. I'm 60 years old, and I have nothing. No one." Catherine sat beside me and pulled me into her arms. "You have me," she said fiercely. "You've always had me, Maggie. You just never let me in. You've spent our whole lives keeping everyone at arm's length, being strong and independent and not needing anyone. But I'm your sister. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere." Something broke open in me then. All the grief I'd suppressed since Richard died, all the loneliness I'd denied. All the fear about my diagnosis, it all came pouring out. I cried for an hour while Catherine held me, and when I finally stopped, I felt lighter than I had in years. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted. "I don't know how to be vulnerable, how to need people, how to accept help." "Then let me teach you," Catherine said. "Lesson 1. When someone offers help, you say yes. When you're struggling, you tell people. When you need company, you call. That's it. That's all you have to learn." She made it sound so simple. But for someone who had spent 60 years equating neediness with weakness, it felt revolutionary. Part 4. Small lights in the darkness. Christmas approached and I dreaded it. Last year, I'd worked through the holidays, volunteering to be on call so colleagues with families could take time off. The year before that, too. And the year before that. How many Christmases had I missed with Richard? How many family gatherings had I skipped for work? "Come to Boston," Jennifer insisted during one of our daily calls. "Spend Christmas with us. The kids would love it. And you shouldn't be alone." "I don't know if I have the energy for travel," I said honestly. "The chemotherapy. Then we'll come to you, all of us. Catherine, too. We'll have Christmas at your house." "Jenny, that's too much work for you." "Mom, stop. We're coming. That's final." They arrived December 23rd. Jennifer, her husband David, Emma, Michael, Catherine, and Catherine's husband Tom. Suddenly, my quiet house was full of noise and chaos and life. Anna and Michael were initially shy around me, clearly unsettled by my bald head and obvious frailness. But by the second day, they had warmed up, and I found myself spending hours with them in a way I never had before. Emma loved to draw, and she set up an art station at my kitchen table. "Grandma, will you draw with me?" she asked. I hadn't drawn or painted since college, 40 years ago. "I'm not very good," I said. "That's okay. It's just for fun." Just for fun. When was the last time I'd done anything just for fun? We drew together. Emma creating elaborate fantasy scenes with princesses and dragons. Well, I attempted simple landscapes and still lifes. My hands remembered the pleasure of creating something, the meditative quality of focusing on color and shape and line. "You're good, Grandma," Emma said, genuinely impressed by my amateurish sketch of the fruit bowl. "Thank you, sweetheart. You're very good, too." "I want to be an artist when I grow up," Emma confided, "or maybe a veterinarian, or both. You can be anything you want, I told her, meaning it. The world is open to you. What did you want to be when you were my age? Emma asked. The question caught me off guard. What had I wanted to be? Before I learned to be practical and ambitious and focused on financial security, I wanted to be a writer, I said slowly, the memory surfacing like something long buried. I wrote stories and poems. I imagined publishing books someday. Why didn't you? I decided it wasn't practical, that I needed a real career, something stable that would make good money. So I went into business instead. Emma looked at me thoughtfully. Do you ever write now? No. I stopped when I was about your age, actually. I convinced myself I wasn't good enough. What? That's sad, Emma said with the blunt honesty of children. You should write again. It's not too late. Out of the mouths of babes. She was right. It wasn't too late. I was 60 years old, fighting cancer, and it still wasn't too late to reclaim parts of myself I'd abandoned. That evening, after Emma and Michael were in bed, I sat with Jennifer and Catherine in my living room, drinking tea. Thank you for coming, I said. All of you. This means more than you know. Mom, Jennifer said gently, you don't have to thank us. We're family. This is what family does. I haven't been very good at family, I admitted. I've been so focused on work for so long that I forgot how to be anything else. You can learn, Catherine said. It's not too late to change, Maggie. It's never too late. That night, lying in bed unable to sleep, a common side effect of chemotherapy, I thought about Emma's question. What had happened to the girl who wanted to write? When had I decided that creative pursuits were frivolous, that only career advancement mattered? I had spent 40 years climbing a corporate ladder, and now, facing my mortality, I had to ask, what had I actually gained? Money, certainly. Status, a title that impressed people at parties. But had any of it made me happy? Had any of it given my life meaning? The next morning, I found a notebook in my desk drawer, a beautiful leather-bound journal Richard had given me for my 50th birthday, still completely blank. I had saved it for something important, and 8 years later, I still hadn't written a single word in it. I sat at my kitchen table with coffee and the journal, and I began to write. At first, just about my cancer diagnosis, the fear, the grief, the anger. Then about Richard, all the things I wished I'd said before he died. About Jennifer, the mother I wished I'd been. About Catherine, the sister I'd kept at a distance. The words poured out, messy and honest and raw. It wasn't beautiful writing, wasn't something anyone else would want to read, but it was real. It was mine. It was the truth I'd been avoiding for decades. I wrote every morning after that, processing my experience through words. It became as essential as any medication, a way to metabolize the fear and grief and regret, to transform suffering into meaning. Part 5, The Long Road Back. My chemotherapy continued through the winter, 6 rounds total, each one leaving me weaker and more depleted than the last. But between treatments, I had good days when the fog lifted and I felt almost human. On those good days, I wrote. I drew with Emma during her visits. I talked on the phone with Jennifer. I let Catherine take me to gentle yoga classes for cancer patients. I attended a support group at the hospital where other women shared their struggles and fears and small victories. At the support group, I met women from every background imaginable. A 34-year-old teacher with triple-negative breast cancer, a 75-year-old grandmother with a recurrence after 15 years cancer-free, a 52-year-old attorney who'd found her lump the same week she made partner at her firm. We were different in so many ways, but cancer had made us sisters. We understood each other's fear, each other's exhaustion, each other's desperate hope to survive. "What are you going to do differently?" asked Patricia, the 52-year-old attorney, during one session. After treatment, I mean, if you make it through. It was a question we all thought about constantly. What would we do with whatever time we had left? "Spend more time with my kids," said one woman. "Travel to all the places I always said I'd visit someday," said another. "Be kinder to myself," said a third. "Stop being so hard on myself all the time." When it was my turn, I said, "I'm going to figure out who I am when I'm not working. I'm going to write. I'm going to be present with my family. I'm going to stop postponing joy." Patricia nodded. "I'm going to leave my firm. I've been working 80-hour weeks for 20 years. And for what? To bill more hours? To make partner at a place that will replace me in a heartbeat? I'm done sacrificing my life for my career." Her words resonated powerfully. How many of us had made that same trade, our lives for our careers, without realizing what we were giving up? My surgery was scheduled for late February, after completing chemotherapy. Dr. Harrington recommended a mastectomy given the size and aggressiveness of my tumor. She offered reconstruction, but I declined. "I don't want more surgery than absolutely necessary," I told her. "I don't need to look the same. I just need to survive." The surgery was long and difficult. I woke in recovery feeling like I'd been split open, which, of course, I had been. The pain was intense despite medication. But underneath the physical pain was something unexpected: relief. The cancer was gone. Whatever happened next, the primary tumor had been removed from my body. Jennifer stayed with me for 2 weeks during recovery, managing my medication schedule, helping me drain surgical sites, supporting me through the difficult days when even basic tasks felt overwhelming. We talked for hours, really talked, about everything I'd never discussed before. My regrets about her childhood, my grief about Richard, my fears about dying. "I'm sorry I wasn't a better mother," I told her one evening as she helped me change bandages. "Mom, you were the mother you knew how to be. You did your best with what you understood at the time, and you're showing me now that people can change, that it's never too late to learn new ways of being in the world. That's a gift too." Her forgiveness, her grace, undid me. I cried while she held me carefully, mindful of my surgical sites, and I felt years of guilt and regret beginning to release. After surgery came radiation, 5 days a week for 6 weeks. It was less invasive than chemotherapy, but exhausting in its own way. The cumulative effect of daily treatments wearing me down. My skin became red and irritated. Fatigue set in deeper than before. But I kept writing, kept drawing, kept slowly, carefully rebuilding a life that looked nothing like the one I'd had before. Part 6. Reconstruction. By late spring, my treatment was complete. Dr. Spock, talking about reconstruction. Harrington ordered regular monitoring, scans every 3 months, blood work, physical exams. "You're cancer-free as of now," she said during my follow-up appointment. "But we'll watch carefully. The first 2 years are critical." Cancer-free, the words I'd been desperate to hear, but they came with an asterisk: for now. Every ache, every pain, every unusual symptom would carry the specter of recurrence. I would live with that uncertainty for the rest of my life. "How do you live with the fear of it coming back?" I asked the women in my support group. "You learn to hold it lightly," said Margaret, a 10-year survivor. "The fear never completely goes away, but it doesn't have to consume you. You acknowledge it, then you get on with living." I was 60 years old, cancer-free, and facing a choice: return to my old life or create a new one. My medical leave was ending. Martin called to discuss my return to work. "We've missed you, Margaret. Ready to come back?" I thought about my corner office, my packed calendar, my 65-person department. I thought about 12-hour days and weekend emails and constant pressure and stress. I thought about Emma asking why I'd stopped writing, about Ruth calmly knitting during chemotherapy, choosing grace over bitterness, about the journal now filled with my honest, messy words. "I'm not coming back," I said. "I'm retiring." Silence on the other end of the phone. "Are you sure? You've worked so hard to build your career. This seems like a big decision to make so quickly." I've had 8 months to think about it. Cancer clarified what matters to me, and it's not climbing higher on the corporate ladder. I'm sure. After I hung up, I sat with the decision, waiting for regret or fear. Instead, I felt profound relief, liberation. I was free. But free to do what? That was the question that occupied me through the summer as I regained my strength. I had retired with a generous pension and savings. I didn't need to work for financial reasons, but I needed purpose, needed something to do with my days besides medical appointments and cancer surveillance. I kept writing in my journal, but gradually the writing shifted from processing my cancer experience to creating something new, a story about a woman who rebuilds her life after loss, who discovers it's never too late to change course. "You should take a writing class," Jennifer suggested during one of her visits. "Actually work on craft, get feedback, see where it goes." The idea terrified and excited me in equal measure. What if I wasn't good enough? What if I'd waited too long? But Emma's voice echoed in my head. It's not too late. I enrolled in a creative writing workshop at the local community college, a class for adults who wanted to explore writing. The first night, I sat in a circle with 12 other people, retirees, career changers, lifelong dreamers who'd finally made time for creative pursuits. "Why are you here?" our instructor asked each of us. When it was my turn, I said, "I'm here because I spent 40 years climbing a career ladder that led nowhere I actually wanted to go. I'm here because breast cancer forced me to reevaluate everything. I'm here because when I was 7 years old, I loved to write. And then somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that love didn't matter. I'm here to find out if I can reclaim that part of myself." The instructor, a woman in her 50s named Carol with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes, smiled. "Welcome back to yourself, Margaret." Over the next several months, I wrote. Not well at first. My early attempts were stilted and self-conscious, weighed down by decades of valuing efficiency over creativity, clarity over emotional truth. But Carol was patient, and my classmates were generous with their feedback. "You're holding back," Carol said after reading one of my pieces. "I can feel you editing yourself as you write, choosing the safe word instead of the true one. What are you afraid of?" "Being vulnerable," I admitted. "Being judged, being seen. That's what writing requires," she said gently. "Vulnerability, truth, the willingness to be seen. You survived cancer, Margaret. Surely you can survive someone's opinion of your writing." She was right. I had faced death. I could face a critique. I began to write more honestly, drawing from my own experience, about widowhood and workaholism, about cancer and awakening, about the ways we lose ourselves and the possibility of finding our way back. The words came more easily as I stopped trying to impress and started trying to tell the truth. One evening after class, a woman named Diane approached me. She was in her late 40s, vibrant and energetic. Completely unlike my former corporate colleagues, "Your piece tonight really moved me," she said. "The one about your husband. I lost my wife 3 years ago, and I recognized everything you described. That specific loneliness, the way grief ambushes you at unexpected moments." We went for coffee, and she told me about her wife, about her own struggle to rebuild a life after loss. By the end of the evening, I realized something remarkable. I had made a friend, not a colleague, not a professional contact, but an actual friend, someone I connected with emotionally, who I could be vulnerable with. "Would you want to have dinner sometime?" Diane asked. "Maybe catch a movie? I'm always looking for people who appreciate foreign films." "I'd love that," I said, and meant it. Diane became my first real friend in years. Through her, I met other women. Her book club, her hiking group, her circle of creative, engaged, interesting people who talked about ideas and art and life instead of quarterly earnings and market share. I started hiking with them on Saturday mornings, something I never would have imagined myself doing in my previous life. The physical challenge felt good, and the easy companionship was a revelation. These women laughed freely, shared their struggles openly, supported each other without judgment. "You seem different," Jennifer observed during her September visit. "Lighter somehow." "I feel different," I said. "I'm learning how to be a person instead of just a professional. It's harder than I expected, but also better." We were sitting in my garden, another new development. I had hired someone to help me create raised beds, and I'd spent the summer learning to grow tomatoes and herbs and flowers, getting my hands dirty, nurturing living things. Watching seeds transform into plants, it was meditative in a way my corporate work never had been. "I'm proud of you, Mom," Jennifer said. "You're doing something really brave, admitting your life wasn't working and choosing to change it. A lot of people never do that." "I needed cancer to wake me up," I said. "That's the truth. I was so numb, so disconnected from myself and everyone around me. Cancer cracked me open." "You did the hard work of staying open," Jennifer pointed out. "Plenty of people go through something traumatic and just close up tighter. You chose differently." October 17th arrived, the 1-year anniversary of finding the lump that changed everything. I woke early, as I had that morning a year ago, but everything else was different. Instead of checking work emails, I made coffee and sat in my garden, watching the sunrise. I had survived. Against odds that had terrified me, I was still here. I thought about the Margaret who had found that lump, so lost, so alone, so trapped in a life that looked successful but felt empty. What would I tell her if I could go back? "This is going to be hard, harder than anything you've experienced, but you're stronger than you know. And on the other side of this suffering is a life you can't even imagine yet, a life with real connection, real purpose, real joy. The cancer won't kill you, but it will kill the parts of you that were already dying anyway. The isolation, the workaholism, the emotional numbness. It will hurt like hell, but it will also set you free. You will lose your breast, your hair, your sense of invincibility. You will gain yourself back." Catherine came over that morning with pastries from my favorite bakery. Jennifer called from Boston. Emma and Michael sang me a silly song they'd made up. Diane texted an invitation for dinner that evening. I was surrounded by love in a way I hadn't been a year ago, because I had finally learned to let people in. That afternoon, I attended my support group at the hospital. Several of the women I'd met during treatment had become dear friends. We celebrated together when scans came back clear, mourned together when the cancer returned, supported each other through the ongoing challenges of survivorship. Patricia, the attorney, had indeed left her firm. She now worked part-time for a nonprofit providing legal services to low-income families. "I make a third of what I used to," she said, "but I'm happier than I've been in 20 years. Ruth, who had been knitting during my first chemotherapy session, had died in July. We held a memorial for her at the support group, sharing stories about her grace, her wisdom, her remarkable ability to find beauty even in suffering. Her death reminded us all that cancer doesn't always have a happy ending, that some battles are lost despite fierce fighting. But even in her death, Ruth had given us a gift, the example of how to face mortality with dignity, how to choose grace over bitterness, how to live fully right up until the end. "How's the writing going?" asked Meredith, a breast cancer survivor who'd become a dear friend. "It's going," I said. "I'm working on something longer now, a memoir about this whole experience. Carol thinks it might be publishable." "Of course it's publishable," Meredith said. "Your story matters, Margaret. All of our stories matter." By the winter of my second year post-diagnosis, I had completed a rough draft of my memoir. It was messy and needed substantial revision, but it existed. 80,000 words about cancer and awakening, about loss and discovery, about learning to live authentically after decades of performance. Carol connected me with a literary agent who specialized in memoir. "I'll be honest," the agent Susan said during our first phone call, "the market is tough, and cancer memoirs are common. But your story has something special. It's not just about surviving cancer, it's about surviving the life you built that was slowly killing you anyway. That resonates." Susan agreed to represent me. We spent months revising, sharpening the narrative, deepening the emotional truth. The work was hard, but exhilarating. I was creating something meaningful, using my experience to hopefully help others who felt as lost as I had been. "What do you want readers to take away from this?" Susan asked during one of our editing sessions. I thought about the question carefully. I want them to know that it's never too late to change, that you don't have to wait for a cancer diagnosis to reevaluate your life, that real success isn't about titles or money, it's about connection, creativity, presence, that vulnerability is strength, not weakness, that we get to choose how we spend our days, and those choices matter more than we think. In April, Susan called with news. A publisher wanted the book. Not a huge advance, but a real contract with a reputable press. My memoir would be published. I cried when I hung up the phone, tears of joy and disbelief and gratitude. At 62 years old, I was becoming a published author, achieving a dream I'd abandoned at 7. Jennifer flew in to celebrate. We went to dinner with Catherine and Diane and my writing group friends, and I looked around the table at these women who had helped me rebuild my life, and I felt overwhelmingly blessed. "To Margaret," Jennifer toasted, raising her glass. "Who taught me that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be." A book launched the following fall, 3 years after my diagnosis. I did readings at bookstores and libraries, sharing my story with strangers who saw themselves in my journey. At one reading, a woman in her 50s approached me afterward with tears in her eyes. "I'm exactly where you were," she said. "Vice president at my company, working 70-hour weeks, no real relationships, no joy. I don't have cancer, but I'm dying anyway, slowly from the inside out. Your book woke me up." "Then change now," I told her. "You don't have to wait for a crisis. You can choose differently right now." "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know, change is terrifying, but staying stuck is worse." I thought about that conversation for days afterward. How many people were living the way I had lived, disconnected, numb, Trapped in lives that looked successful but felt empty? How many would wait for a devastating diagnosis before making changes they could make right now? My second book of scans came back clear. Dr. Harrington smiled as she shared the news. "You're doing great, Margaret. Every clear scan is cause for celebration." "When do I stop being afraid it will come back?" I asked. "Maybe never," she said honestly. "But the fear will get quieter over time. And meanwhile, you keep living. That's what survival looks like. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of life despite it." Emma was now 10, and she had decided she wanted to be a writer, like her grandma. She had started writing stories, elaborate fantasies about brave girls going on adventures. "Will you read my story?" she asked during her summer visit, handing me a notebook filled with careful handwriting. I read her story about a princess who didn't want to be rescued, who went on her own adventure instead, and my heart swelled with pride and love. "This is wonderful, Emma. You're a natural storyteller." "Really? You're not just saying that because you're my grandma." "Really, you have a gift. Keep writing. Don't stop, no matter what anyone tells you." "I won't," she promised. "You didn't stop even when you were old, so I definitely won't stop when I'm young." "Even when you were old?" I laughed at the blunt assessment, but she was right. I hadn't stopped. I had started again, which is different and perhaps harder. Michael, now 8, had discovered a love of science. "Did you know that every cell in your body replaces itself every 7 years?" he told me excitedly. "That means in 7 years, you'll be made of completely new cells. You'll literally be a different person." "That's fascinating," I said, charmed by his enthusiasm. But later, I thought about what he'd said. Maybe it was true metaphorically, too. Maybe every 7 years, we had the opportunity to become someone new, to shed old patterns and create different lives. I had done that at 60. Who might I become at 67? At 74? The future was no longer something I took for granted. Every year was a gift, every moment precious. It's been 4 years now since my diagnosis. I am 62 years old, cancer-free, and living a life I couldn't have imagined during those dark days of treatment. I write every morning, currently working on a novel about a woman who discovers her mother's secret past. I hike with Diane and her friends every Saturday. I visit Jennifer and the grandchildren quarterly, actually spending time with them instead of just appearing briefly between work obligations. Catherine and I have dinner together weekly, rebuilding the sisterhood we neglected for too many years. I attend my support group monthly, offering hope to newly diagnosed women by being living proof that survival is possible, that life after cancer can be rich and full and meaningful. I garden, I paint, I read novels in the middle of the day without guilt. I say no to obligations that don't feed my soul. I say yes to adventures and spontaneity and joy. I am not the same person who found that lump 4 years ago. Cancer didn't just threaten to take my life, it gave me a different life, one I actually wanted to live. I won't lie and say I'm grateful for cancer. I'm not. It was brutal and terrifying, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I lost a breast, months of my life to treatment, and the luxury of feeling immortal. But I'm grateful for what cancer forced me to see, that I was wasting my one precious life in pursuit of things that didn't matter. But I was choosing isolation over connection, achievement over fulfillment, safety over authenticity. Cancer woke me up, but I'm the one who chose to stay awake. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about Richard. I wish he could see who I've become, the Maggie he always knew was hiding underneath all my defenses and work obsession. I think he'd be proud. I imagine what I would tell him now if I could. You were right. Life happens while we're making other plans. I'm sorry I missed so much of ours, but I'm learning, finally, to be present, to show up fully, to choose love over fear, connection over isolation, meaning over achievement. I'm learning that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. My doctor appointments continue. Scans every 6 months now, instead of every 3. Each clear result is a celebration, but also a reminder that nothing is guaranteed. The cancer could return. Someday, something will kill me. Cancer or heart disease or simply old age. But in the meantime, I'm living, really living, not just existing. And that makes all the difference. Last week, I received an email from a reader, a 45-year-old woman who had read my memoir and decided to quit her job, move closer to her aging parents, and pursue her dream of becoming a teacher. "Your book changed my life," she wrote. "You showed me that I don't have to wait for a crisis to make changes. Thank you for your courage in sharing your story. This is why I write now, not for fame or money, but to connect, to witness, to help others see possibilities they might have missed. Every person who tells me my story resonated, who says it helped them reevaluate their own choices, makes the hard work of writing worthwhile." Yesterday, I met with my writing group, and Carol announced she's retiring from teaching. "I'm 72, she said. "Time to make room for new voices. But Margaret, I think you should take over the class." "Me?" I was shocked. "I'm still learning myself." "We're all always learning," Carol said. "But you have wisdom to share, and you understand what brings people to creative writing in midlife. That hunger to express something true, to reclaim parts of themselves they've lost. You'd be wonderful." "I'm considering it. Teaching would be yet another way to turn my suffering into something meaningful, to help others find their voices the way Carol helped me find mine." If I could write a letter to my younger selves, the driven 25-year-old climbing the corporate ladder, the 40-year-old sacrificing family time for work, the 58-year-old who found that lump, what would I say? "Dear Margaret, at 25, you are working so hard to prove yourself, to show everyone you're capable and competent and worthy, but you already are worthy. You don't have to earn your value through achievement. The corner office you're chasing won't make you happy. The promotions won't fill the emptiness inside. True success is measured in love and connection and presence, not titles and salaries. Don't wait to live. Life is happening right now, in this moment. Don't postpone joy. Write, paint, create. These aren't frivolous hobbies. They're essential parts of who you are. Don't abandon them in pursuit of practicality. Call your sister more often. Let people in. Vulnerability is not weakness. The life you're building looks impressive from the outside, but it's hollow at the center. Build differently. Build a life you actually want to inhabit. Love your future self who learned these lessons too late, but not too late. Dear Margaret, at 40, you're working 70-hour weeks, missing Jennifer's childhood, too busy for Richard's attempts at connection. You tell yourself it's temporary, that you'll slow down soon, that your family understands. But Jennifer doesn't understand. She just feels your absence. Richard is lonely in his marriage to you, and time is running out faster than you know. In 16 years, Richard will be dead. You will have all the time in the world then, but you won't have him. Don't wait. The work will always be there. He won't. Slow down. Go to Jennifer's soccer games. Have dinner with your husband without checking your phone. Take that vacation you keep postponing. These moments won't come again. You can't get time back. Use it wisely now. Love your future self who would give anything for one more day with Richard. Dear Margaret, at 58, I know you're terrified. You just found a lump, and you're trying to decide whether to call the doctor or wait until after your big presentation. Call now. Call today. The presentation doesn't matter. This cancer is going to be the hardest thing you've ever faced. It's going to take you apart, physically, emotionally, spiritually. You're going to lose your breast, your hair, your sense of control. You're going to feel more vulnerable than you ever have. But you're also going to find yourself, the real you, underneath all the professional armor and emotional walls. You're going to discover that you're stronger than you knew, braver than you felt, more loved than you realized. You're going to learn to write again. You're going to make real friends. You're going to become the grandmother Emma and Michael deserve. You're going to rebuild your relationship with Jennifer and Catherine. You're going to create a life that actually feels like yours. Cancer is going to save your life by almost taking it away. You will survive this. And more than survive, you'll finally start living. Love your future self who made it through and came out transformed. That's my story. Not a story about cancer really, but about awakening, about learning to live before it's too late, about second chances and courage and the possibility of change at any age. I am 62 years old. I'm a breast cancer survivor. I'm a writer, a grandmother, a sister, a friend. I'm finally fully, authentically myself. And if you're reading this and recognizing yourself in my story, feeling trapped in a life that looks successful but feels empty, postponing joy, choosing achievement over connection, I want you to know you don't have to wait for a crisis to change. You can choose differently right now. It's never too late to wake up. It's never too late to come home to yourself. It's never too late to start living the life you actually want. The question is, will you wait for something to force your hand, or will you choose for yourself? I hope you choose. I hope you choose yourself. Choose presence, choose love. I hope you choose to really live while you still can, because life is short and precious and uncertain, and we don't get to come back and do it differently. We only get now, this moment, this day, this one beautiful, messy, miraculous life. Don't waste it. This memoir is dedicated to all the women who are finding their way back to themselves, who are choosing courage over comfort, who are learning that it's never too late to change. May you find the strength to live authentically, love fully, and embrace every precious moment. And to Richard, who always saw the real me, even when I couldn't see her myself, I miss you every day. I'm finally living the way you always wanted us to. I hope wherever you are, you're proud.